Don't miss our dirty tips and tactics video on the brand new Kharadron Overlords.
Spiky bits.
Alright, what's up, Hobby Maniacs? Rob Baer with you again today. It has been a busy day. 8th edition is coming, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about Age of Sigmar and the brand new Kharadron Overlords, of course. Now, this is a fantastic faction. There is literally tons of content in this particular book here. We're not going to be able to cover it all. Of course, we are probably going to get some of this wrong, and I apologize for that. But again, there is a ton of content to go over. And again, there is no perfect game of Age of Sigmar or 40K, and there is no perfect review of these books. Unfortunately, we did not make them. We are not the designers. We can only try the hardest we can to give you every ounce of information you need to build a competitive force for this army that matches your particular playstyle. And if you don't plan on playing these guys, show you the gotchas that you need to know to look out for that may affect your army when they set up across the table from you. So that being said, we're going to jump in with the allegiance abilities right here on the first area of the page. Is jump over to the war gear section here with the different weapons and titles and things you can take for your vessels, your ironclads here, and then we're going to jump to the units themselves and then try to cover some of the formations or the battalions and things like that and go on from there. There is a lot of material to cover. We're only going to show you what we feel you need to know right off the bat. The rest of it you're going to have to cover yourself with the free downloadable war scrolls, and of course, if you are planning to pick up this army, you're probably going to buy the book right off the bat. So first off, allegiance abilities work just like they normally worked in all of Age of Sigmar. The first one to be aware of is Fleet Master. This is an awesome one. It lets you reposition your vessels at the time of deployment before the round begins. Why is that important? Well, chances are that if you are fielding these guys, you're only going to field a couple of vessels. You're going to have your stuff embarked on it, so you're going to get done first, which means you're probably going to have the priority at that point in the game. So you're gonna want to be able to reposition if your opponent does something wacky that you did not plan for. So something to keep in mind and give you that option select ability right there. I think it's pretty dope. Stickler for the code. This lets you generate an additional footnote for your army, and footnotes are over here in the battle traits section. It's the stick to the code ability that gives you kind of like a 3-part customization to any of the non-Skyported themed armies that you can build here. Now, majority of these, actually all of these, are a once per battle ability, but it does allow you to take 2, which is pretty dope. But if your general is slain before you have used the footnote, it is lost, so keep that in mind. Now, there are ways to get additional generate additional command traits here inside of some of the Skyport abilities, but of course you can never wish for more wishes. We all learned that in Aladdin. Therefore, you cannot wish for more sticklers for the code to get more of these to do them once per battle. You cannot duplicate these abilities, so just keep that in mind. Wrap your brain around that. You can't go infinite. They figured us out, us dirty gamers. Shame on us. So other than that, these being pretty much one per use per battle, there are ways to get 2 of them, which is super cool, and we told you right there. Now, there is also ways to get a 3rd, believe it or not, but you cannot get a 3rd over here, but you cannot generate this twice. So I think the only way to do it is to get a maximum of 3. You cannot go infinite, and you cannot get more than that, but most armies will only have 1, and then there's a bunch that are preset that we're gonna circle back to with these port city ones right here, or Skyports. So first off, you've got articles, amendments, and footnotes. So it's kind of like a contract, right? It's a contract of the code, so to speak. So they're kind of cool. I like them. There's a couple that I think you need to look out for. First off is 6, settle the grudges. When both armies are set up, pick an enemy unit. Your army bears a grudge against that unit. You can reroll all to hit, and wound rolls a 1 against that unit for all of your units. So basically, you're hunting down, you're trying to kill this unit. Your units in your army, assuming you are the allegiance of these Kharadron guys right here, which I think they're called Skyfarers. I actually forgot to check that, but it's clearly printed right here. Yeah, they're called Skyfarers. So as long as you have Skyfarers allegiance, you can do all of these, and then you can pick that for this unit. So it's basically getting preferred enemy against one particular unit against your enemy. This is actually, we're gonna call this concentrate fire. And this is going to come into effect. You're going to understand why this is an important ability right here, because there's ways. The whole theme to this army seems to be to either get extra attacks or to reroll and get preferred enemy against certain things in certain scenarios, which kind of benefits all of your stuff. And it also seems like their battle line, their troops, are just there for ablative wounds for their characters, and the real heavy lifters are some of the kind of like heavy support choices, even though that doesn't exist in here. But you're basically going to see like the Thunderers, they do work. The floaty dudes that are the engineer guys, they are doing work. They have dominant close combat abilities, and they're really going to shine through. So you really kind of have to pick and choose your overlapping abilities that really benefit the whole army. And this is probably the first one, and it's just a cornerstone of what you can use to start off to customize your army to benefit there as well. And then there's another one too, add one, the very first one here. You can reroll battle shape. Nope, that's not it. I guess you could use honor. Reroll rolls and wounds of 1 for your heroes if the target is a hero or a monster. You can also adjust these right here. You can pop a footnote to adjust your article right here, so that might be good in the tournament setting, so that would make a lot more of these viable if you are only allowed to choose one configuration for your army for the whole tournament circuit. Now, I'm not sure exactly how tournaments are ruling that. So if that is the case, you definitely want to consider these options over here. Remember, you can get 2 in certain circumstances. I think there's a way to get 3 as a matter of fact. So then you could definitely choose this. You could option select and pop and change this if you set up against somebody with a bunch of heroes or monsters. So just kind of keep that in mind right there. Amendments, the good ones here are you get +1 additional artifact of power, and an artifact of power can indeed be a Eldrin work. So if you have a lot of ships, you can get additional abilities here, which they also, if you take a Skyport, they give you custom titles for your ships as well. So something else to keep in mind. There's a lot of overlapping stacking abilities that you kind of got to wrap your brain around, and that's another reason why there's so much content in this particular book right here. So I'm only going to show you the big stuff right here. So subtly grudges, reroll 1s, and for the amendments, we're also going to look at number 2, which is don't argue with the wind, which is a very powerful one when you run with a sky vessel, which are your ships, your ironclad ships. You're considered to have rolled a 6. Now, some people are going to be like, yo, that means 6 inches. That does not mean 6 inches. You are rolling a D3. So if your D3 is a 6, you get a 3. So it's actually 3 inches, even though it counts as rolling a 6. Another very important thing to keep in mind here, it's both good and bad because it's easily confusable at cursory look. 4 is run and shoot, prosecute all wars with hate. In your first turn, your units can run and shoot, which is great because a lot of the weapons have like 24 and 18 inch range, and if you're moving 4, or if you're moving 10 to 8 with your ships, that's going to give you pretty much the whole board of fire where you can start to concentrate fire, which you're starting to see right here. And then over here, the footnotes, definitely one of these things right here. Once per battle, when you make a battle shock test for one of your units, you can replace your roll with a roll of 1. Now, there's going to be lots of ways to manipulate battle shock, and battle shock's actually going to come into play a lot with these guys because the bravery for a lot of the cases is 6. And while you're like, well, that isn't that bad, it is that bad because they don't have a whole lot of wounds. So when you start losing guys, it's not like Beastclaw Raiders where you're like, yeah, they got a bravery of 6, but you know what? They're really, really tough. If you start losing guys out of Beastclaw Raiders army, you're just like, well, I guess I'm losing the whole squad anyways because you got stuff in there with 5 and 3 and 12 wounds. But at that point, you're just like, well, shrug. But with these guys, you got 2 and 1 wounds on the reg. That's something you're gonna have to kind of keep an eye on right there. So watch your battle shocks. You're able to manipulate your enemy as well as your own on a lot of the abilities in this particular book right here. Number 3, I'm liking. There's no trading with some people once per battle. When an enemy suffers an unsaved wound from an attack made by one of your units, you can roll a D3. That enemy suffers that many mortal wounds in addition to that damage. It might be kind of fun just to have it, just to pop off and get an extra 2 mortal wounds. Not super duper necessary, but this one's pretty good. Today's foes are tomorrow's customers. When one of your unit retreats and runs, you can replace the run roll with a 6. So that is super important. In a lot of cases, you got to get there. You need that 6. Boom, right there. You pop it off. You're good. 5. Without our ships, we are not once per battle. You can reroll the dice for an ability that heals the sky vessel. So there's lots of ones that just do it. There's some that do it on a 4-up. I think there's one that does it on a 3-up. So a lot of different ways. But again, these things have a ton of wounds. But sometimes it's good to have those extra wounds, especially for victory point kind of scenarios and things right there. So this is the one where you get to reset the articles. We already talked about that. Wishing for more wishes. And I think that is the big ones there. I thought there was +1 to hit. I guess there isn't. Okay, well that's fine. Then we go over to Artifacts Power. Pretty much worked the same way that we've seen since the Sylvaneth book came out. You can take one instead for mounts. You can take one for Sky Vessels right here. You can take a weapon one right here for your hero. You can take a War Gear one for one of your heroes over here. Now, same deal. You get one per army, one per hero, but if you take a battalion, you also get an additional one right here. So you can have one, you could use one additional here to have an artifact of power for each War Scroll battalion in your army. Same model cannot have more than one artifact of power. So something to keep in mind. Again, nothing new right there. So you can have one. If you got a battalion, you can have two. If you got two battalions, you can have three. So on and so forth, etc., etc., etc. So all of these ones for vessels are super good. So let's run them down real quick. If an enemy unit finishes charged within ½ inch of this vessel, you can immediately shoot at the that unit with this weapon as if it were your shooting phase. Oof, that can be brutal if you charge that ironclad and it gets a devastating broadside off on you. The incredible self-healing hull on a 4-up or more, it heals 1 wound. Roll a dice for the Sky Vessel in each of your hero phases, so that's the 4-up one. Just kind of happens in addition to any other healing it receives, and there are many ways to do that, believe me. Malefic Sky Mines. If a enemy unit that can fly, there's a lot of flying modifiers to this. Within 1 inch, it suffers D3 mortal wounds. Now, I'm not exactly sure what is out there that's so devastating that flies in the game, but there's something to keep in mind. There's a lot of anti-flying stuff in here. This Sky Vessel halves the penalty for being overburdened, rounding down. Reroll this result if the Sky Vessel is a gun hauler, so something to keep in mind right there if you want to put lots and lots of dudes on this one. Prudency Shoots. If a Sky Vessel is destroyed, you can reroll any rolls of 1 when determining whether it's passenger, survivor, or they bail out. Reroll this result if this is a gun hauler. So they don't like gun hauler on this particular one right here, and that's just assuming that you're rolling D6 to get these and not just choosing them. And Magnificent Omniscope. This Sky Vessel can move an extra D6 rather than D3 when using its Aetheric Navigation ability. Reroll this result if the Sky Vessel is a gun hauler. So gun haulers can get these super duper ones right here. Now remember, this is the D3. It counts as a 6, which would be 3 inches. Wait, is that the thing right there? We'll have to check the navigation rule right there. I personally don't like the navigators. I don't think they're that great. When you run with a Sky Vessel, you're considered to have roll a 6. When you run, I think you can do it towards the navigator. If a navigator is visible, an extra D6. Yep, that's what it is. Okay, so this actually is good for this ability here because you would count as rolling a 6 in this instance, so it would count as a 6 instead of the D3 ability over here, in which case it would be 3. So this is actually pretty cool if you are looking for speed in your particular vessel right there. And then you got the Aetheric Weapons. They're not all super good right here. I like number 2, which is add 1 to 2 wound rolls made for this weapon. Number 3 is you improve the rend characteristic by 1. So if it's a 1, it becomes a -2. If it's a 2, it becomes a 3, which would be really ridiculous. Or if it's a dash, it becomes a 1 right there. And 4, you get +2 attack characteristics to this weapon. Now I think it's a missile weapon that gets +2 attack. So unfortunately, you cannot give it to some of the guys that have a dope hammer, but you can improve their rend or their wound ability over here. And then Treasures of the Skyport. These are actually pretty cool right here. Let's see, what did I come up with for these? Artifacts. I didn't really see anything that was too crazy. Reroll saves a 1. If 4 or more, at the beginning of each combat phase, roll a dice if there's an enemy unit within 3 of this hero on a 4 or more that suffers a mortal wound. So it's getting better than what it used to be. A lot of times that was a 6. I kind of like it, and it's whatever. Hero can attempt to repair a single Sky Vessel within 3, or the one it's embarked on. On a 4 or more, that Sky Vessel heals 1 wound. Remember, there's a lot of ways to repair these Sky Vessels right here. Some stuff for binding. These enemy units can never benefit from modifiers to their save or save rolls against attacks made by this hero. Can be good, can be bad, very situational. You can change the, oh, this is a super good one right here, right there, H-Charge Rune. Once per battle, you can change the result of 1 hit, wound, damage, or save roll for the hero to the result of your choice. Anytime, once per battle or otherwise, you get to just change a roll to anything you want. You should take that. That is super good right there. I would imagine a lot of people are gonna actually feel that Aetheric Rune right there for sure going forward. And then it gets into the battle plans, which we're not going to really talk about. It has no bearing on the competitive nature or the rules nature of this. Then we get to the battalion section, which we're not going to quite cover yet, but you can tell I've already marked up my book, taking a lot of notes here, trying to wrap my brain around all of this stuff. So jumping into the war scrolls themselves, here we are. It's been 15 minutes and we haven't even gotten to the units themselves. So first off, there's 12 of these war scrolls in here. So it doesn't seem like a lot when you think about it, because there's a lot of armies out there that have a lot more. But these actually have a lot of rules in them to cover. We're not going to cover every single little piece in them, other to say that some units are good, some units are average, and some units are exceptionally awesome. And we're going to talk more about those as we go through this. So first off, we've got Brock Grungerson. Straight out of that movie Dune, I suppose, Baron Harkonnen. Great model. It's 300 points, 12-inch move. He can fly, 8 wounds, 8 bravery. You're going to see a lot of multiple wounds, but 7 bravery and 4-inch move on the troops themselves. But this guy can fly. Of course, he is the Billy Badass of the army right there. Got a lot of range firepower here with multiple attacks. Hitting great on 3s. For the most part, wounding pretty good on 2s to 4s right there. He does, the key to this guy, I think, is that he has the Aethermatic Saw, which is an amazingly powerful close combat weapon that just chews up, it spits out units. 4 attacks, 3s to hit, 2s to wound, -2 Ren, D3, but you can activate it, and as long as you don't roll a 1 or a 3, on 1 you hurt yourself, on a 3 or more you get the 3 on the damage right there. So a -2 Ren doing 3 damage is going to chew through a lot of guys, and this is kind of where I'm starting to get the tactic of a lot of these character units right here. Remember, you can join these guys to the transports. You can put your troops and your battle line guys in the transports. Then they can all kind of disembark and be close to each other. And there's a lot of ways for you to throw wounds on, like you can basically lookout surf from these guys onto the little trooper guys, which is kind of like maybe also a predecessor to how 8th edition 40k is going to work. But for right now, let's just stick to Age of Sigmar right off the bat. You can reroll hit and wound rolls for 1 if those attacks are going against a hero or monster. So if you pair him up against your opponent's Billy Badass unit, chances are he's going to do the Lord's work on them as well. He has an impact hit as well, which is super good. On a 2 or more, the unit suffers D3 mortal wounds from the impact of his charge right there. A lot of stuff here. You can also, until your next hero phase, from the Kharadron Overlords within 18 can charge even though they ran in the same turn. So a lot of cases you're going to want to get these guys in there. They're going to be ablative runes for these faster moving folks that can fly as well. So just some stuff to keep in mind right here. They have this rule called High Hitcher, where it basically doesn't count towards overburdening the transport capacity of one of the sky vessels right there. And then you got the Arcanaut Admiral for 140 points. I don't see why you wouldn't take this guy. At 2,000 point games, you can have 4 of these heroes. I don't see why you wouldn't have some of these. He's got a volley pistol. It's okay. 3s to hit, 4s to wound. 3 attacks, 3s to hit, 4s to wound. His attacks are 2, 3s to hit, 2s to wound, -2 Ren. You can definitely improve that if you wanted to. You cannot modify this guy over here with any sort of artifacts of power. But remember, we just talked about stuff here that's going to give you extra negatives to your Rens and things like that. So there's all sorts of different things. You get +2 to attacks for a missile weapon, so that could be okay, but it's not super good, right? So you want to really start looking at a lot of this stuff right here that you're like, oh, okay, so I can get +1 to my rune rolls, I can get +1 to my Rens, I can get +2 to missile weapons. Can't give it to this guy, but you can give it to some of these guys over here, and you're about to see that, right? If you're embarked on a sky vessel, it can run and shoot in the same turn, which is awesome for getting your guys across the table. A lot of times you're just gonna like drop these guys off, have a buffer around the ship. The ship can still kind of shoot into combat and also move away. Or if you move up, you can disembark your guys out the next turn and then move back. You can also run back and create a buffer zone between the guys in assault and have your ships just running around, just kind of blasting in a circular fashion, kind of like a wagon wheel type deal, right? Look out for the boss. If there is a friendly Skyfarers unit within 1, when the Admiral suffers a wound or a mortal wound, you can roll a dice on a 5 or 6. He suffers a mortal wound instead of that unit. So that's what I was saying. A lot of the times, your battle line guys are going to be able, well, not just your battle line guys, anything with Skyfarer's ability, but the battle line guys are the cheapest, you're gonna want to throw the wounds off of your HQ character type guys onto those little dudes. They're basically ablative wounds, as long as they're not like the Thunderers or something like that. You need those guys to survive and start dishing out that firepower right there. And then talk softly and carry a big hammer / stick. Reroll failed to hit and wound rolls for the Admiral in the combat phase. So you don't even have to do that overlapping concentrated fire or anything like that. This guy just gets it done. You're gonna want to take one of these guys at the very least if you're not gonna take Brock Gunnison over there. Aetheric Navigator, we're just going to skip it. It helps you get movement across the table, but I think there's so much stuff out there that you don't need to really worry about it. I may be wrong. I've been wrong before, but we just can't talk about everything right here. Now, Aether Chemist and Edron Master. These are two of the staples of all of your armies, and you want to select which one based on a couple of different criterias. Like if you're already getting a preferred enemy kind of ability, you're going to want to pick one over the other. If you're getting additional attack ability based on what Skyport you're taking, you're going to want to take one over the other. And these are the keys to those overlapping rules, those overlapping kind of abilities to really make your army that much more potent in battle in both the close combat and also kind of the shooting phase type deal, right? So Aether Chemist, first off, is a 100-point character. Remember, you can take 4 of these guys in a 2,000-point army. Has a great shooting attack, 10-inch range, 3d6, force hit, force wound, -2, rend, 1 damage. It's average, but it's averagely good if you do the math on it. Very, very cool guy right here. 5 wounds, 4-inch, 4 saves, 7 bravery. So these guys are a little bit better than the average Joes right here, which are 6-inch bravery, which I said, remember, bravery is going to come into play with these guys because it is kind of low and they have such low wound numbers right here. Now, for the Aether Chemist, this is the key. In their hero phase, they can augment the weapons of nearby Arcanauts. When they do, pick a friendly Skyfarer's unit within 10 until the next hero phase. Add 1 to the attack characteristic of one kind of weapon carried by the unit. Who cares at that point? This is going to do work, and we'll see why. So, the Aether Chemist give you an additional attack. The Edron Master for 140 also has a decent missile weapon. It's 3s, 2s, -1, D3 damage right there, but it's got the Aethermite Hammer, which is way better in close combat than these heavy instruments. 3-inch, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, -1 rend, and D3 damage. However, in each of your hero phases, an Edron Master can repair a single sky vessel within 3 or one they are embarked on. That sky vessel immediately heals D3 wounds. So now you're starting to see where some of these abilities, you get 1 here, you get 1 there, and now this guy can do D3. Okay, so if you're going vehicle heavy, you're going to want a lot of these guys right here. If you're going shooting heavy, you're going to want +1 attack kind of thing right here. And also, there's additional kind of abilities here that are going to come into play as well. These guys have that supercharged harness. So they're going to have their Aethermite Hammer is going to get the 3. So this is very similar to what we saw right here with the Aethermeric Saw, except for it's a hammer, so it's going to count as a 3. It's almost worth doing because the wound is 6 right there. I could almost always recommend doing this as well for this guy, because you might lose a couple of wounds, but you know what? Always getting that 3 on this damage and this 3 on this damage right here is totally worth it. Arcanaut Company, cannot say enough good things about these guys. They're basically ablative runes for your characters. You need these guys. On paper, they're not going to do that much damage. I mean, I'll just show you the chart rate right here, just on average, how this is kind of going to play out. You might do 2 damage from the super volley gun. Don't put a lot of stock into these weapons unless you are, I mean, you can get additional attacks, but at this point you're already getting 6 attacks, so who cares? So you're going to do some damage. You might actually get 2 damage through with the Aethermatics, 2 damage with the pistols, 4 damage if you go all skyhooks, which is pretty much the same as if you had just gone with the Aethermatics and the pistols right there. I feel like it's 50-50, one or another. In combat, they're just kind of average. They're just there to soak up wounds, really, for the most part. That's kind of how I feel. These guys are here to die and take the weight off your character models and to kind of distract the enemy from the guys that do the heavy lifting, which we're about to get to. Then we get to the Ironclad and the Frigate, and the Gun Hauler, I think, is next as well. So, Ironclad's 440, Frigate's 280. They both have the Embark ability right here, which basically, in a nutshell, says you can put dudes inside of it if all of the unit gets within 3 inches during of a friendly Ironclad movement phase. They can basically just go in just elect to go in. They embark, okay? If it blows up, you roll a die. For each model from that model's unit, roll a die for each model embarked within it. So if you have a squad of 10, you roll 10 dice. 1, they're dead. If you have, now this is separate units. Remember, you can put separate units in this thing, and that's really important. It's not like 40K where you have to combine them and then they get into this thing. You can have, you know, your whoever in here. You can have your character A, you can have your character B, you can have your character C, you can have your character D, and then you can have 10 of whatever in here as well, up to a total of 20. You can also overstack it. You can go up to 25, but then you start losing 5. You would lose 5 inches to your movement here. So that's what this whole overburden thing is about. But if you have the guys with the balloons, the Edrin balloon things on the back, they can hitch a ride along with no overburden penalty right here. So that's something to kind of keep in mind and get those gears flowing. Back to this. So you can embark 20 models. There's no bulky, there's no this, there's no that. You can put 20 models in here. The caveat is if this thing blows up or is destroyed, you roll a dice for each one. So if you have a single character in here and you roll a 1 for it, that single character now is removed, right? Is slain. So that character that could have 5 wounds is now slain, straight up. It doesn't take wounds, it doesn't take a mortal wound, it is just slain. There's no way to kind of look out sir that. So this is a very important mechanic to wrap your head around. It does not work like 40K. It doesn't even work like anything we've ever seen before. But in that regard, it's actually kind of cool because there's a risk versus a reward kind of type deal right here. And there's a way to actually re-roll it if you get a 1 in any roll. One of the Skyports have that. So that's a very important thing. Risk versus reward. If you're going to go heavy on the embarked troops kind of type deal, you might want to consider taking that particular Skyport's abilities. Now, when you get out to disembark, you just basically move all of the guys up to 3. So up to the 3 line. So you have your base, you move them up to 3. Now a lot of these guys move 4, so then, and this is all during the hero phase. So it's basically like a free disembarkation. So during the hero phase, you get out 3, up to 3. Okay, cool. So here's my guy 3. Now during the movement phase, hey, guess what? I can do movement stuff. So now I can move up to 4 because most of these guys move 4. So that's 7 inches. Now, theoretically, depending on what you do beforehand, because there's certain ways you can like deep strike these things and then you're not allowed to run and different things like that. So just always read kind of along the flow chart of what you're trying to do. But in a lot of cases, you can get out, you could shoot, or you could run, or you could try to launch an assault for 2d6. So theoretically, on average, you could get 14 inches from the base of a sky vessel by the end of the turn into close combat. And then that sky vessel has a nice big buffer zone of 14 inches to try to stay alive. You know, and granted, they can stay alive. They have a lot of wounds. They have what they call belaying valves, which is just a close combat attack. This particular one here has a separate fragmentation charge of 2d6 if it's fully healed or undamaged, so to speak, in combat. Now, they also have grenades, which we're not going to explain. You probably already heard that by now. But there's ways to kind of inflict damage if enemy models get within range, to keep them from piling in, which may allow you to activate something and kind of cut them off at the pass, so to speak. So there's a lot of little mechanics in here that you're going to have to fine-tune, read, and different things like that. There's also abilities, flagship abilities, that allow you things like reroll hits of 1 in the shooting phase, which is great. Also add to your missile range, which I don't think is that great. However, reroll hit and wounds of 1 for attacks directed against units that can fly. Remember, there's a lot of anti-flying stuff in here. Or 2 to attack characteristic of the Aether Shot carbines, which are up here, which would take you up to 10 if this was undamaged. Now, there's a lot of single shot weapons and a lot of multiple shot weapons, but you're not going to see that through all the vessels here. So the Ironclad itself is a veritable fortress of firepower, but the frigate is kind of like more for just getting dudes across the table in a safe manner. This is more like the say this is like a Night Titan compared to like say a Rhino, so to speak, right here. There's a very big difference in damage output. However, they're still going to perform the basic functions of this can hold a bunch of dudes and protect them. This can hold a bunch of dudes and protect them. This is going to do it a little quicker, a little better, and more efficiently. And this is your powerhouse right here. So just keep those kind of things in mind. Now, this particular one over here, the frigate, like I said, doesn't have as much offensive output, but it still has a lot of the same basic rules here that you saw right over here. You can heal wounds on a 4-up, just straight up, hey, I get to roll, all right, let me see if I heal this wound on this guy. It basically has a built-in and will not die, borrowing for 40k lingo. There's other cool stuff in here too, like you get to move the extra D3 if you're in line of sight to a navigator, like we talked about earlier. Remember, that counts as a 6 if you have that particular ability, which technically counts as 3 inches. Remember, it doesn't quite work the way you think it works unless you take, again, that other ability. There's a lot of cross-referencing of rules in here that can really leave you with a little bit of confusion. Or a little bit of, singles cross. Like I said, there's no perfect game of 40k, there's no perfect game of Age of Sigmar, there's no perfect rules review, because there's so many freaking rules in each and every battle tome that comes out for Age of Sigmar. Seems to get more and more complicated. Gunstock gun hauler, it's a great little shooting platform. It has some cool rules. You can basically look out sir to it using the escort vessel rule over here. You can explode with some 6s on wounds that do some ridiculous damage, does some extra mortal wounds and stuff. They're cool. You're going to want to take them. In some cases, they do a little bit of work, but I don't think they're super necessary at 220 points. You're probably better off putting some points into things like the Thunderers that have a ton of shots. You basically get to pick your gun. They can all have that gun, from what I understand. 5 or more each is armed with an athermatic weapon, whether it's signature, this weapon, that weapon, this weapon, that weapon, any of them you basically get to pick. Now, do you put all your eggs in one basket and take something like the Dex Sweeper at 12-inch range, D6, 4-inch, 4, it's incredibly average, but it's consistently average? Or do you want to put your eggs in some other basket right here where you get a little bit different variety of offensive ability? Now, they do have this really awesome, these are all short range, so you're going to want to use your frigates to get them up, get them close, deploy them out, kind of do that deal we were talking about where you build this buffer zone between your frigate or your sky vessel and get these guys into combat, have your special characters up here doing the lookout sir kind of thing, and really activating those super mortal wound abilities, really trying to drill down through units. But the whole time, you can use these guys too on a flank to kind of just anchor and do some shooting. They also have this cool rule called Keep Your Distance. Make a move, including running if you wish, as if it were the movement phase. They may not embark as part of this move, and that is when this unit is chosen to make attacks in the combat phase, they can instead retreat. So you shoot. If they get charged, you just go to make attacks and you activate them first and just run them out of combat. Good to go right there. Now, the engine riggers are really good. On a roll of 4 or more, oh, excuse me, we don't want to talk about that quite yet. Let's see, what do they do that is so good? So first off, they have some pretty decent weaponry right here. They have the athermatic saw, which is amazeballs. We already talked about that. This thing, it does the Lord's work. Now, they don't have a way to activate it to automatically get that 3 damage right there, but at 3's to hit, 2's to wound, and -2 rend, and D3 damage in combat, these guys are going to do work. Now, they're squads of 3, they move 12, they can fly, they have a 4-up save, 7 bravery, 2 wounds, so they're not too bad, but don't leave them out in the open, they will get popped. They have the ability to get popped right there. Now, the Mizzen Master, which is your captain or your sergeant out of the squad, gets an extra attack with that athermatic saw, which is super good as well. So you're going to be getting 4 if the unit is undamaged. They also can repair a single sky vessel within 1. Immediately heals a wound. It just goes off. They heal. They can add 1 wound to a sky vessel right there. They have a grapnel launcher, which is really neat. On a roll of 4 or more, they shoot it at a target, and then this is really interesting. They immediately move this unit of engine riggers any distance directly towards the target. So you shoot, okay, grapnel launcher, can fire it at the end of the shooting phase after all the shooting has been. Choose a terrain feature or unit, friend or foe, with a wound characteristic of 10, or move within 24 inches or more within 24 inches and roll a die. So it has a range of 24 inches. Doesn't matter how far you want to go. So you can shoot it back at your ships and then just kind of jump over there, or a terrain piece and just kind of jump over there. Pretty neat little ability to get them out of harm's way. They have the hitcher ability, so they're not going to take up transport capacity, so to speak, in your vessels. And they can also have the skyhook ability if you choose to take it, where they can basically move closer after they hook something right there. So I think overall, these guys are better at combat. These guys as far as mortal wounds go and shooting output, they are 120 points. The Sky Wardens are their sister kind of unit. They're better overall at more combat attacks, but they're not so much on the mortal wound side, so to speak. They have the grappling launcher, they have the hitcher ability, they have the exploding drills, so they get the 6 explode kind of thing right there. They have time charges. They're all right. It's another roll of 6 ability. I never like those. They never work. I'm just not a fan of those right there. And then it goes into pitch battle profiles, which we already kind of talked about the points right there. Now, we're at 35 minutes into this video already, and we still haven't covered a lot of different things. So, like I said, there's a lot of material in here. I would have liked to have cut it right here and continued on into another video, but I feel like we got the juices going. Let's just dive right into it. So next up, we have the battalions in here still, and then last but certainly not least is the Skyport particular ways to field one of the 6 Skyports right here. And what they are is they have a specific way of interpreting the code. So article, amendment, and footnotes, a lot of times they have specific command traits as well as additional benefits to a particular battalion, like a way you could take something that you couldn't normally take it kind of like before. So first off, they've got the Grand Armada, which is a kind of like a formation of these battalions right here. It's 100 points. It's pretty much realistic. It's like 4,000 points worth of stuff right here. Most people don't even have that yet. So this is something that you're probably not even going to see and or have to worry about. Then you got the Sky Command that comes into play in a lot of the particular, I guess, Skyports. They allow you to make this a certain way. Like you could take extra Eldrin Masters or Aether Chemists or something like that. Currently, this is the loadout right here that you can see. You get 3 heroes, you get the Arcanaut Company, you get 1 to 3 units of the Edrin Riggers, which I personally like. I think they're better than Skyfarers. And then the Arcanaut Ironclad, the big boy right there. What this does is this allows you to subtract 1 from any battle shock test. And remember, these guys are 6, so that helps out a lot. And whenever a friendly hero is within 3 inches of the Arcanaut Company, you can roll a die, and on a roll of 5 or more, the Arcanaut Company suffers the wound instead. So they keep your heroes, your character guys, alive to do the work that they need to do, which kind of seems the way that this book kind of wants you to do. Then you've got the Iron Sky Squadron, which is around 700 points for 80 points for the battalion here. You can reroll run and charge moves. I feel like that's unnecessary. You can add +1 to the attack characteristics of all missile weapons of the Arcanaut frigates in this battalion. I feel like that's average. I'm not sure that's super competitive or even worth taking, to be honest. Maybe I'm wrong, but we're just going to keep moving on right here. The Grunstock Escort Wing, which seems to be a reoccurring kind of battalion in this book. It's roughly 1,840, it's roughly about 400 points left, so about 1,400 points, because you only need to take 1 of the Thunderers and 1 of the Sky Wardens right here. But you do have to take 3 of the Gun Haulers, which I'm personally not 100% sold on, 1 of the Frigates, and 1 to 3 units of the Thunderers, which I personally like. Now here's the key. This is the Focus Fire Battalion. At the start of each of your shooting phases, choose an enemy unit, add 1 to the hit rolls for any units in the battalion if all that unit's attacks are directed against that enemy unit. So that's 2 different ways to pick something and get, well, this is foe preferred enemy because it doesn't work from wounds. So that's 1 of 2 different ways to get some rerolls. So now if you take one of those 2 things right there, you're going to want to grab the ability that gives you +1 to your attacks. So you kind of see where if you take this, then you're going to want that kind of type thing as you start reading through these, as they start having those overlapping abilities that really, really generate a lot of devastating results on the tabletop. And then Aether Strike Force, which combines elements from the Stormcast with, of course, the Kharadrons themselves. This looks to be, I think it was like 800 or 900 points. It's about 900 points for 100 points for this right here. In any of your hero phases, the Knight Venator can lose his Star-Fated Arrow as if it were your shooting phases, and this attack hits. But the target is not slaying units from this battalion. Add 1 to their hit roll against that for the remainder of battle. Again, that's awesome. Adding 1 to hit, because a lot of times I would rather have a better chance to hit something and take my chances on the back end with the wounds. It's like you gotta play the lottery in order to win. And if you're not hitting, you're not going to have a chance to wound. So I'd rather have better chances to hit. And then you can do some stuff on the back end, like have additional attack. If you take have ways to get additional attacks, which we know are already out there, especially from shooting, then you can really see where some of the stuff starts stacking up. And now you're getting these abilities on top of abilities, on top of abilities, and on top of abilities. In each of your hero phases, you can choose a single unit from this battalion to make a shooting attack as if it were your shooting phase. Of course, you can't Knight Venator because then you could mark from destruction. You can't wish for more wishes. Everybody knows that. A unit can only do so if 2 or more units from the battalion are within 6 inches. So you get a free shooting attack, but you gotta have 2 or more other units from the battalion within 6 inches. Now, these come with the Sky Wardens, they come with the Riggers. I like the Riggers personally, not so keen on the Sky Wardens, but that's okay. A Gun Hauler, again, not so keen on it. The Prosecutors, we all know they're good. Take them with javelins. That's how I pointed them up. And the Knight Venator himself right there. So this is a solid little force that could fit into a lot of 2,000 point armies. So there's all those right there, just to give you an idea. So you're going to see some reoccurring themes here in a second. But remember, per battalion, battalions inside of battalions contain the multiple abilities of the battalions within. And then jumping back, last but not least, to the Skyport abilities right here. There's 6 different flavors, and remember, there's 6 different distinctive paint schemes for them as well. Earlier in the book, you're going to want to check that out. We're not going to really cover that. We talked about it in our first look review right there. So here it is, the very first one up right here. The Barkanar, City of the First Sunrise, they're basically good at unbinding and at battle shock ability. Something that you may want to look at, but I think for the most part, people are going to skip this one. Barak Zilfin, the windswept city, of course, is super good at movement. Go figure. Now, here's the thing. We're going to talk about this for a second. Don't argue with the win. When you run a Sky Vessel, you are considered to have rolled a 6. That's standard. That's the standard amendment on the other page there. Once per battle in your hero phase, you can immediately move as if it was the movement phase. It cannot run. It cannot do this in a turn in which it descended using the asymmetric Endrins, which are over here. We'll talk about that in a second. It's a new type of artifact of power that's available to these guys. If you choose an additional footnote from page 99 for the fleet, other than these are just guidelines. Remember what I said about that? You cannot get the these are just guidelines, because then that allows you to pick a new article and it allows you to wish for more wishes, and they've already figured that out. You can't go infinite with this. So, what is asymmetric Endrins? Well, those are pretty neat. This allows you to keep one of your ships basically in Deep Strike Reserve, to borrow from 40k terminology. At any point, at the beginning of any of your hero phases, this vessel can descend. When it does so, you set it up on the battlefield more than 9 inches away. Units that disembark from this vessel in the turn it descends must do so more than 9 inches from the enemy. So remember, when you come in, you can set them up within 3 inches. By disembarking, you still have to be 9 inches away. Neither the vessel nor the units that disembark from it can move in the movement phase in the turn it descends. If the vehicle is not descended by the end of the battle, the vessels and the units embarked on it are considered slain. But what it doesn't say is that you can't come in, you can't get out, and you can't launch an assault. So theoretically, you can launch an assault. You can also shoot. So you bring those Thunderers in, you know you need pinpoint attacks at one particular place. You're like, I need these guys right here, right now. You call it to Zordon. The Zordon drops in Green Ranger power in the form of a vessel with some sort of Thunderers or some sort of crazy shooting, and there it is. You get work done. This is the gotcha kind of Skyport ability right here. And then, of course, you can have an extra Arcanaut frigate included in the battalion when you point up the Iron Sky Squadron if you go that route. So that gives you that transport that you can put those guys on right there. These guys are good at assaults for the most part. I'm not going to get into that much because, again, we're trying to keep this to a respectable amount of time. The Barak Urbaz, or Urbans, I guess, they're good at power and buffs. They're kind of pretty good. So let's see, what was their big thing here? Your army can include one additional artifact of power. Always good right there. Definitely like that. You can't wish for more wishes. You can reroll battle shock tests when you're in their territory. Oh, the artifact of power right here. Immediately after move, the Ironclad that has a Edrin work in the movement phase, although not if it runs, pick an enemy unit within 6 and roll dice for each model in that unit. If you roll at least a 6, the unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. So you're just going to be restricted to your normal movement right here, but If you roll at least 1/6, which is incredibly unreliable, you get D3 wounds right there. It's okay, but it's not super duper good. There was something else about this one I thought we liked. The additional artifact of power. Oh, well, I guess if you take an additional artifact of power, you can start doing cool things like setting up for those tricks and sorts of things like, well, what is it? It's like getting your extra wound rolls or rend abilities, or to shooting you can get +2 attacks, stuff like that. It definitely sets it up right there. The Barak Mornar, the City of Shadow. Again, you can reroll battle shock tests. If you use your first turn, you can run and shoot. Pretty standard stuff right there that you can normally take. The command trait in shooting phase, pick an enemy unit until the end of the phase. You can reroll all failed to hits against that unit for any of you units that are within 3 inches of your general. So that really comes into play right there, because you can definitely string out the ability of a general. But remember, you cannot measure abilities when you're embarked on transport, so these guys have to be on foot. But if you get a lot of guys out and into position, you can do a devastating barrage of re-rolling failed hits. This isn't ones, this is re-rolling failed hits right here. This is huge. You get those abilities that give you those +1 attacks or +1 shots or attacks to your weapons. You really start doing a lot of work right here, I feel like. And this might be one that you really see a lot of right here. You can take an extra gun hauler again. Not super sold on those yet, but hey, it is what it is. And Barak trying, the super tryhards, they seem to do pretty good at shooting. So they can reroll hit and wound rolls of 1 against that unit for all of your units. So you get to pick one of their things in their army and you get to reroll. You basically get preferred enemy, but also they have the Lord of Grudges. When picking an enemy unit for the Settle the Grudges article, pick D3 units instead. So average, you're going to get 2. You're going to be able to do that to 2 different units, which I think is pretty solid. You can get an extra Arcanaut frigate as well if you take the escort wing, which you saw that already. Usually it's you either get the gun hauler, the frigate, or something like that as those neat little abilities right there. And that, as far as artifacts of power, can reroll all failed and hit wounds in a combat phase for attacks to target enemy unit, which was picked for the Settle the Grudges. So not only does that work in shooting, for all of you, actually it doesn't matter for if it's shooting or close combat, but their artifact of power also gets it. If the Baer can reroll failed and hits in a combat phase for attacks that target an enemy unit which was picked for the Settle of the Grudges article. Seems good. I mean, either way, might be a little redundant, but I like it. So that is all of the Skyport abilities. So now you're thinking, well, there's a lot of different ways I could go with my army. So there's a little bit of tactics in here, just to let you know. Let's find those real quick and just kind of talk about it. Like I said, when you start out, you're probably going to only want to set up a couple of your ships. And then that way, you're able to kind of react to what your enemy does. Like I said, for the first time, they actually put deployment tactics and things in here, and they talk a lot about that right here. But for the most part, if you're taking ships, this is how your deployment's going to work. Maybe you want to spread them out a little bit, but then you can redeploy based on some of those abilities we talked about right there. And then, of course, they give you some ideas for theming your army, and there's a couple of different price or points costs right there as well. So check out this page too when you pick up your book. So that is pretty much it. I mean, it's been like an hour. Thanks for hanging in there with me. So much to talk about in here, so many different overlapping abilities, so many different ways to play. Of course, it's a lot of material to cover, and we really did our best right here without breaking it into 2 different videos to make y'all watch. Obviously, there might be some stuff we misspoke about. There might be some stuff we didn't cover that was pertinent, so please leave it in the comments below to help out all the folks really looking at picking up this brand new book and this brand new faction of Age of Sigmar, these new Sky Pirate dwarfs right here. And of course, if you like our video features, make sure you subscribe to this channel, and you can always support us over on Patreon to get a monthly shipment of miniatures every month delivered to your door. In a lot of cases, you can also get that quarterly. So if you want like a whole mini army showing up, well, there's options for that too. And of course, head on over to longwar.net. That's the home of the battle reports for exclusive content, early access videos, and more. Become a veteran of the Long War today.
Deleted scenes, bonus content, and all the interviews and post-game wrap-up videos can be located in the Hall of Veterans on thelongwar.net. Visit thelongwar.net today and try a week completely free with no strings attached. That's not all. Thelongwar.net is also your hobby resource for exclusive early access with an ad-free experience to all your favorite videos. Members of the Hall of Veterans gain early exclusive access to multiple hobby videos.